You've probably heard all about how ADUs can help you pay off your mortgage early, earn extra income, build your rental portfolio, house hack, expand your family, increase the value of your property. And if you haven't, you definitely need to. The only issue is there is so much information online and a lot of it is very general, which is exactly why I've created this crash course video for you that covers the process from A to Z. Taking a quick step back, my name is Dominique Higgins. I'm a real estate agent here in Southern California where I specialize in working with developers and investors to buy and build their dream projects. And I am so gung-ho about ADUs that I even had an ADU plan pre-approved in the city of LA. And I'm getting 2 more ADU plans pre-approved in the city of Glendale and Glendora as we speak. That being said, I do want to make sure that you know that I am not an attorney, I am not a CPA, and that before you take any action in relation to what you see here, that you consult with your own legal, tax, financial, whoever, professionals. Now, with this video, the way it'll be organized is very simple. First, I will just do a very general outline of what ADUs are so that we're all on the same page. Then I'll go into the actual process of what it takes from soup to nuts, essentially, of building an ADU on your property. And then I'll end it out with a lightning round. We'll answer the top frequently asked questions that come from homeowners when it comes to ADUs. And with that, I know your time is valuable, so let's get right into it. What exactly is an ADU? An ADU is an accessory dwelling unit. That's what it stands for. And it is a residential dwelling that is located on the same lot as an existing or proposed single family or multi-family property. Now, in the past, ADUs have gone by so many different names: mother-in-law suite, granny flat, backyard cottage, secondary dwelling unit, you name it. But the one thing, and this is very important here, the one thing that an ADU is not, it is not a second unit. And that's because a second unit, I know this sounds really weird because it's like a duh, it is a second unit, but a second unit legally is what creates a duplex on a property. And the reason why this is an important distinction is because second units are subject to additional requirements above and beyond what an accessory dwelling unit is required to provide. For example, with a second unit, you have to be in a multifamily zone or on a property or on a lot that is zoned to allow for duplexes. If you are going for a second unit, you're actually subject to even more zoning restrictions in terms of setbacks, in terms of size, in terms of minimum requirements, and also too with a, again, second unit, not an ADU, with a second unit, you may be requested by the city to provide additional parking. And I'm not talking just one parking space, they may require you to provide 2 parking spaces. So if for any reason you, my friend, have the option between a second unit or an ADU, and you don't necessarily want to provide all those different additional things that come with creating a second unit, or your lot simply isn't big enough to do it, then I would suggest you might consider the ADU as an option. Now, when it comes to the different types of ADUs that are available out there for you, there are honestly 2 main types. On one end, we have your very standard ADU, and on the other hand, we have what is called a junior ADU or a JADU for short. With the JADU, you create this from existing space in the primary dwelling unit. So this can be anything from an attic, it can be a basement, it can be an attached garage, it can be a rec room, it can be a den, it can be, let's say your home is L-shaped, it could be you subdivide, you take out that bedroom in the back and you create a JADU from that. Now, that being said, a JADU does have more restrictions than an ADU. So with a JADU, there is an owner occupancy requirement. With all the new laws that have passed, that has not gone away. Cities can require that you as a homeowner live in either the JADU or in the existing dwelling unit that is attached to that JADU. Additionally, the JADU is limited to 500 square feet, and the minimum size for JADU is 150 square feet. Now, some cities, not all, will allow you to add up to 150 square feet to that JADU, but only for ingress and egress, aka like a covered entrance into the JADU. But again, not all cities will allow you to do it. And another thing with JADUs as well is if you do decide to, let's say you have an attached garage to your home and you decide to convert that into a JADU, unlike an ADU, with a JADU garage conversion, you are required to replace that parking somewhere else on the lot. So you are required to either build a new garage or come up with the parking, either carport, covered, whatever, on that same lot. So that's also something that's very important for you to keep in mind. Now that we've covered what a JADU is, let's zoom back out to those two main types of ADUs, those branches, and we'll cover what a standard ADU looks like. So there are actually 3 additional options when it comes to the type of ADU that you want that come under a standard ADU. So you can have an attached ADU, and this is an ADU that is new construction that creates an addition to your existing property for the sake of an ADU. So think of it like instead of doing an addition for a bedroom, you're doing an addition for an entirely new home that's attached to your own. You also have the detached ADU, which again is new construction, so it's new build, and it's somewhere on your lot, but it's not physically attached to the existing primary dwelling unit or primary multifamily unit if you happen to be a multifamily unit owner. Then you have a conversion ADU, which is not new construction, but it is a ADU that is created from an already existing space on the property. This space, and this is where it can get fun with conversion ADUs, this space can be the attached garage, it can be the detached garage, it can be the detached office you built during the pandemic, it could be the detached gym that you have on your own property, it can even be a 3,000 square foot barn that somehow you got legally permitted on your lot that can be converted into an ADU. Now, with a conversion ADU that you decide to do with a garage, so let's say you decide to convert either your attached garage or detached garage into an ADU, you are not required, this is unlike a JADU, you are not required to replace that parking. So that is something that you should keep in mind, and it can be a pro in doing a garage conversion ADU versus a garage conversion JADU. Legally, as required by the state, the maximum for an attached ADU is 850 square feet for a studio size ADU, or 1,000 square feet for an ADU that has at least 1 bedroom. I want to be very clear here. That is the state standards. At the end of the day, you'll want to check your local city or jurisdiction to see what requirements they have in place for the size limitations for your attached or detached ADU. One thing to keep in mind is there is also what I would like to call the fallback ADU that every city is legally required to allow on your property, regardless of the lot size requirements, lot coverage requirements, open space requirements, floor area, maximum ratio requirements. Regardless of all of that, every city in the state of California is supposed to allow you to build an ADU that is 800 square feet in size, that is set back at least 4 feet from the rear property line and the side property line, and an ADU that is at minimum 16 feet in height, which in some counties is 2 stories, but in other counties it's usually just 1 story. If for some reason you're getting no's from your local city, just know at the end of the day, you have that fallback ADU, which is 800 square feet, either attached or detached, set back with 4 feet from the rear and side property lines, that is no more than 16 feet in height, that you are legally allowed to do somewhere on your lot. With all of these different types of standard ADUs in mind, the conversion ADU, the attached ADU, the detached ADU, just know that once you get above 750 square feet, you can and usually will be charged what are called impact fees. And this is essentially the city saying, because your ADU is so large and has a significant impact in our neighborhood, we justify ourselves in charging you additional fees in the form of school fees, development fees, park fees, etc., etc. Now that we've talked about what an ADU is and the different types of ADUs that are out there, let's jump into the actual ADU process. So where exactly do you begin? Now, this is where I kind of branch away from the conventional advice and wisdom and suggestions that are out there. And I say you start by calculating your all-in budget for your ADU project. And the reason I say this is because at the end of the day, unless you have an limitless bank account, an ADU is going to cost a lot of money. And you have to know that you have that money up front before you start spending and investing time, energy, phone calls, and talking with a bunch of different people about an ADU project. Figure out 1, where is the money gonna come from for your ADU project? And 2, how much can you get? Now, the traditional means that people use to finance their ADU projects are HELOCs, which is essentially a home equity line of credit. This is where you turn your actual property into a credit card and you use it to finance your ADU project from beginning to end. This is very popular because you can use the money, but you don't pay interest on the money unless you use it, if that makes sense. Very much like a credit card. you don't owe interest on money that you have not used against that line of credit. Same thing works with the HELOC, and that's why it's a very popular method that homeowners like to use to finance their ADU projects. Other ways you can finance ADU projects include cash out refi loans. So these work a little bit like HELOCs, in which you're using the equity that you've built into your home. But in this case, you're actually extracting that cash out and then you're putting it into your own bank account. And then whether you use it or not, you are paying interest on those funds. Now, again, because you are paying interest on those funds as soon as you take it out, I don't typically recommend this method unless you are like ready to go on your ADU project right away. Other ways that a lot of people finance ADU projects, I mean, some people just have it like this and they have money in the bank account, whether it's savings, CDs, IRAs, or their other retirement accounts. Other ways that people like to finance ADUs also include, and this is only though for those who do not live on the property. So this is, I'm talking more so to my investors and developers out there. These are people who will go ahead and use hard money loans or private financing. The way you use hard money loans for an ADU is very similar to how you use a hard money loan for any other standard construction project. Your lender is going to take a look at the value of the property in the future and see whether or not the ADU that you plan to build will be worth what you're saying it will before they go ahead and extend that money to you. Again, using a hard money loan or private financing for an ADU construction is very much limited to those who do not actually live at the property. That is like a legal requirement, so please keep that in mind. One thing I will add here for this conversation is there are grants out there available to help finance your ADU project. However, it doesn't work in the way that a traditional grant does, in that a lot of these grants don't necessarily give you the money up front, but rather you apply and you get a credit towards the back end. So that is kind of how it works for the Cal HFA. This organization, they have this $40,000 ADU grant program. And because unfortunately they were getting scammed at the beginning with this program, they changed things up a little bit. And so the way it works is you pick a lender that they've pre-approved, you work with them, you get that loan done through them, you start paying for stuff, whether it's your plans, permits, everything like that. And then once you've racked up your receipts, you then go back to them and then you ask for that credit back. I'm not too much of a fan of this program because A, it is very limited. B, because of the way it works in that you have to go back and get the receipts. And then even then it's like it's kind of crazy. And two, because they charge you, not only do you get taxed on this money, but you also get charged administration fees, which very much reduces the impact of that grant itself. I've seen cases where people say net, they only got like $20,000 credit back at the end of it. So just something to keep in mind if you are thinking about using that program. Also, there are other grant programs out there. I believe Neighborhood Housing Services has a grant that's available, and a couple other nonprofit organizations. Even some cities have ADU grants available. Depending on where you are located, I would definitely look into that. Step number 2, in order to get an ADU on your property, is to then go to your local city or jurisdiction and to see what the ADU requirements are for your specific property. Each property is unique and each property will have different requirements, even if you are in the same city, which is why it is so important to do this research on your own. It's also very easy. So you're gonna go onto Google, you're gonna type in your city's name plus ADU requirements, and usually cities will have like a handy dandy like outline that's 1 or 2 pages that will outline what you can and cannot do, or they'll have some type of brochure. If not, then you can also check their zoning code, which it will be, and it legally has to be listed out there. As you're checking these requirements, the key things that you're looking for are the setback requirements, the minimum size of the ADU that you can do, the maximum size of the ADU that you can do, maximum height standard, the minimum distance that is required between your main dwelling unit versus your ADU. Also, during this time period, as you're on your fact-finding mission, you're also going to want to know what are the development red flags that exist on your property. So is your property in an HOA? Is it in a historical district? Has it itself been labeled a historical landmark? Are there oak trees on the property? Is the future ADU that you want to build going to be located within the drip line of an overhead pole? You want to make sure that you know these up front. I'll also add to this list that you want to know if there's anything that limits your ability to even do the fallback ADU. Certain counties are legally allowed to prohibit not only ADUs, but even the fallback ADU if there are existing conditions that justify it. The biggest example I can give of this is some parts of Riverside County, which is kind of gross. They have a very fragile sewage / septic system, to the point where they can say, hey, if you want to do an ADU, you're gonna have to do a soils percolation test. You're gonna have to do all this additional testing, meet all these additional requirements, and that new ADU will have to have its own septic system, its own drainage system. It'll have to have this entire robust plan that for some people, cost-wise, can prohibit them from doing an ADU, or it can outright prohibit them from doing an ADU. So you want to make sure, and that's just one example, but you want to make sure that your city or county doesn't have anything weird going on with it in terms of infrastructure. You definitely want to keep those in mind and just know what they are for your specific property. At this point of the ADU process, now that you know where the money is going to come from for this ADU project, how much it will be, and what you legally can and cannot do as far as an ADU for your specific property, you're going to step into the fun part, which is step number 3, figuring out what type of ADU you want to do within that box that you have now created. Now, this is where I like to say, hey, start a notes page on your phone, or start a drafts in your email, or start a Google Doc or Google Sheet where you can just dump all the different ideas that you have in. I would suggest looking at tons of pictures online. I was just looking at floor plan layouts to see what works for the type of ADU you want to do. Here's the quick little hack too. Go on tours of different properties that are actively for sale in your neighborhood that have ADUs. Take pictures, take videos, take everything. Just take all the information in, test it out and see, hey, is this something that would work for us? Is this something that would work for our property? Is this something that I want to see? During this process, the key things and key questions that you want to answer is what type of ADU you want to do. Is it going to be a JADU? Is it going to be a attached ADU? Or is it going to be a conversion ADU? How large of an ADU do you want to do? How many bedrooms do you want that ADU to have? How many bathrooms do you want that ADU to have? Who is this ADU intended for? Is this going to be for family? Is this going to be for a renter? Is this going to be for how long of a renter is this going to be for? These are kind of the questions that you'll want to answer during this stage. And also, you'll want to list out what are the non-negotiable items that you want within your ADU. For example, are you the type of person you're like, this ADU must have a dishwasher? I don't care what happens. I don't want them doing their own dishes and then the garbage disposal and then the breach. No, I just want them to have a dishwasher. That's something that you can add to the list. Some things that are common on the non-negotiables list is a washer and dryer, sliding glass doors, a private area that's separate from the actual main home for the people, the occupants of that ADU to enjoy for themselves. So these are the things that you want to assemble and create kind of like a wish list at this point, because the next step is number 4, doing a rough estimate of how much this dream ADU that you've kind of concocted is going to cost you. And again, this is where I break from traditional wisdom, advice, and suggestions out there that say, oh no, just go straight into having a person to design the plans. The reason why I say pause the brakes and find out for yourself how much this ADU is going to cost you is, again, so that you save time and that you save money and then you save yourself from surprises down the line. Because no matter what an architect or GC tells you their fees are going to be, there are certain things that are going to cost you regardless of who you use in the process. And it's important you know the cost of these things before you actually do it. So this is a stage where you're gonna grab a piece of paper or create an Excel spreadsheet and you're gonna list out beginning to end all the different things that you could potentially be charged for this ADU project. At the top, you're gonna wanna start with the type of ADU you have. So let's say your dream is to do a 900 square feet, 2-bedroom ADU with a full kitchen and just wall of windows, okay? Let's just say hypothetically, that's what you wanna do. Under that, you're gonna calculate for yourself, again, the plan application fees. Your local city will provide you your fee schedule for this, so you can just check what that is. You're gonna plug that number in. For the actual plan design fees, you're gonna plug in a rough estimate. A good number to start is anywhere between $3,000 to $15,000 roughly. Under that, you're gonna have your engineering fees. Again, a good estimate is $1.50 per square foot for a single story structure, or $2 per square foot for a 2-story structure. And you're gonna plug that in. Under that, you're going to add in all the different kind of fees that your city will charge you, whether that's the school fees, the development impact fees, the sewer connection fees, the fee for a new meter, all those different line items. I want you to add them on that sheet, and I want you to do a very quick Google search for what those might be. It does not have to be perfect, but it just has to be a reasonable number that's put in there. When you get to construction, you're gonna use, I'm just gonna share the information with you. So roughly here in Southern California, construction for ADUs, when average conditions, is anywhere from $250 to $350 per square foot. That's just a rough estimate. Above that is, let's say you have something special, unique about your property. It's on a hillside. You want to do like Carrara marble countertops or something like that, high-end finishes. Then your ADU is probably going to run anywhere from $400 per square foot to $500 per square foot. If you get into the $600 per square foot, you are being robbed. Please stop. Turn around, run away. You're also gonna take it a step further, and you're gonna call your insurance company, and you're gonna say, I wanna do X size 900 square foot ADU. How much would it cost me in order to do it? Just give me a rough estimate, insurance guy, please. I just need it for my sheet. They're gonna give you a number. You're gonna plug that in. You're also gonna plug in your appliances, because guess what? Your GC and your designer are not going to pay for those for you. So you're gonna go on Home Depot's website and get a very quick estimate of how much those will be and plug them into there. You want this to be, again, an as inclusive as possible budget, roughly, of what it's going to cost you in order to do the ADU that you want to do. And the reason why this is so important, because you're gonna get a total at the bottom of that like sheet, and you're gonna have to decide, am I okay with this number or am I not okay with this number? So for example, let's say at the beginning of this process, at step 1, I determined that my all-in budget for an ADU is $300,000. And I went into the process thinking, hey, for $300,000, I could easily afford a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom even, 900 square foot ADU. And then you go through this process, and then you very quickly find out that that's not possible. This is the stage where you can say, okay, let me step back to the drawing board, go back to the previous step, which is picking the type of ADU I want, and tinkering with the different things on your non-negotiable list or on your wish list. Once and only after you've gone through steps number 3 and 4 and gotten to a number that you can live with, will you then go into step number 5, which is finding somebody to actually start the design of the plans. Now, who can you use in order to design your plans? You actually have a lot of different options, each of which has their own pros and cons. So first off, you can start and use a full-out architect. An architect is someone who is licensed to do designs and plans for buildings in California. Now, the pro of this is they can do any advanced feature that you need for an ADU project. I don't know, a 3-story ADU, anything special and super, super unique and super, super niche about an ADU project that you need for your property, an architect is going to know how to do. On the flip side though, that comes at a cost, and architects tend to be the priciest option when it comes to ADUs. I mean, they could charge anywhere from like $15,000 plus for an ADU plan, which for some people is totally legit. For others, that's a bit of a sticker shock. If you happen to be the latter, your second option is to use an architectural designer. I myself fall into this category. I founded an architectural design company. I teamed up with a couple of people, and we do design plans for ADUs. Now, with an architectural designer, they are not licensed. I am not licensed. However, what I do is I partner with a licensed engineer in order to provide the structural calculations for an ADU design that is above the Type V standards that each county has. Type V is very much, I guess the best way to explain it is it's a plug-and-play system for structural calculations. Each city or county usually has them, so you're able to design up to those standards. You can even do it yourself, so long as your ADU design meets that plug-and-play system, you're actually able to get your own plans designed. Outside of that, you need a licensed structural engineer to sign off on those plans, which is what I do for my clients. Another option is to use the pre-approved ADU plans that a city has. Again, I mentioned this at the beginning of the video. I have a pre-approved ADU plan here at the city of LA, and what that allows homeowners to do is they simply contact me if they want the plan, they purchase it, and then I'm able to take that plan and configure it for their specific property and get it approved. Some cities have these and offer these plans free of charge. For example, the city of San Diego, and they have tailored that plan specifically for their building code requirements. Other cities, again, work very similar to the city of Los Angeles, where you have to actually approach the designer yourself, pay for the plan, and then have that designer go ahead and get it approved. As a final option, you can also use a design build firm. Now, a design build firm or contractor is someone who is just that. It's a company that not only is able to design the plans, but they also will do the construction. And the benefit of this is you'll be first in line in order to know how much your construction costs are going to be, because you're getting your estimate from the same person who is designing your plans. So that actually can help you a lot. Another additional benefit of working with a design build firm is they can actually work with you ahead of time to start getting those materials that you'll need eventually for your project, which can also be helpful, especially with all the supply chain disruptions that we're experiencing right now. If it's a designer, if it's the design build company, or whether it's the architect, understand exactly what it is that they'll be giving you or what is included with their fees. On average, you want to make sure that you're getting the architectural and also the structural plans that are required in order for your ADU to be approved. These will include a plot plan, a floor plan, elevations, cross sections, electric plan at the very least, and the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing details that are required by the local city. Not every city requires a full-on MEP plan. Usually they require the details, so make sure that you're getting exactly what you need. And then you want to make sure that you're getting Title 24, which is a requirement for all ADUs, whether they are a conversion, attached, or detached. And this is basically a statement of how this future proposed ADU will meet the new energy efficiency requirements. On the structural side, you want to make sure that you are getting the floor framing plan, you're getting the foundation plan, you're getting the shear panel wall schedule, construction details. That is especially important because those are literally the instructions that a contractor will use in order to build out your property, and that you're getting the roof plan as well as the structural calculations. Once you've gone through the process and you've made sure that the designer that you're going with will actually provide all of those items and you've decided to sign that contract and go with them, the process then kind of picks up its own momentum and moves itself. So that designer will then go to your property, they'll meet you on site, they'll take a bunch of pictures, they'll do all the initial measurements, and they will then go back to their studio, come up with a couple of renderings, whether that be 2D or 3D visuals. They'll share that with you. I'm kind of taking you through the process that I do. It could be different for any designer that you use. And then they'll get your final sign off on the layout as well as design for that ADU. And then they'll get started in terms of designing that first initial set of plans that will then go to the city. Now, when the designer goes to the city, those plans will go through a 2-step process. And again, this is something that your designer should be doing, but I'm going to share it with you anyways because I'm assuming you're the type of person like me who likes to know how everything works, even if you're not doing it. So once those plans go to the city, they'll go to phase 1, which is they will be approved by the planning officials. So what the planning officials will do is they will take the application from the designer who has your permission to submit it on your behalf, and they'll first make sure if that application is complete. If it is, they'll say, congratulations. Now, if you want us to check them, pay us. This is where you, not the designer, but you as a homeowner will then pay those fees directly to the city. Then once they receive that payment, they have 60 days, and this is important, they have 60-day deadline in order to give you a response, which means they cannot sit on this plan for longer than 2 months without saying anything or without giving your designer any corrections. So if at any point in this process, you have a designer who says, I haven't heard back from the city in like 3 months, y'all need to have a conversation because something is definitely off and the city legally was supposed to give you a response by that time. The planning officials will then check that plan to make sure it meets all the zoning requirements, and that's key. The zoning and planning requirements for your property are met with that plan. And that can be anything from they want to make sure that the ADU that you want to build is not further than the setbacks that it needs to be, or it's not larger than it's supposed to be, or it's not smaller than it's supposed to be. That's essentially the whole point and the intention behind this phase 1 of the plan approval for your ADU plans process. Once planning comes back and says, hey, yeah, we've pre-approved this plan design, it meets all of the planning and zoning requirements, you can now go into phase 2, which is where your designer will take that approved architectural plan set, and then they'll also add in, if necessary, the structural plan set. They should technically do it all in one, but some people like to separate it, to each their own. And then they will submit that to the building department in order to get the building department's approval. Now, the intention behind getting phase 2, which is the building department's approval, is to make sure that those plans meet the actual building code. So phase 1, the whole intention was to make sure those plans meet the planning and zoning code. Phase 2, the building code. And so they'll check structurally, everything checks the boxes, if everything makes sense. And this process, again, they have at max 60 days to respond to you, which is thankfully came into place just recently with the new laws that passed this year. During this phase, you will also be more involved, i.e. you're gonna be making a lot of payments, because during this process, the building department is gonna require you to apply for a new address for your ADU. They're gonna require you to get the school fees taken care of, any impact fees taken care of, getting clearances that you may need, whether it's from a utility company, so on and so forth. You're gonna do a lot of different processes are gonna happen during this part of the plan. Again, all of which your designer or architect is overseeing, but you are going to be paying for. So that's why it's important to keep that in mind. Each of these steps does come with a fee, and usually those fees are, again, listed out in the fee schedule that is posted within your local city. Once your designer has successfully cleared everything that is on your property and has successfully addressed all of the different corrections that your local building department has made for your plan, the building department will then go ahead and give you that stamp of approval, and you, my friends, will then receive your fully approved set of ADU plans. Now, at this point, with your fully approved set of ADU plans, I would suggest this is the best time to start looking for a GC. Again, this is where I break from conventional wisdom. A lot of people will say, no, you should start looking for a GC as your plan is getting approved. I mean, you can in order to save time, but I would say if you do decide to shop for a GC before your plan is approved, make sure that you reconfirm how much their bid is going to be once it is. Because what a lot of general contractors will do, I'm not saying all, but what a lot will do is anything that differs from when they originally saw the plans, they're going to charge you a cost overrun. So if an initial set of plans, it had one thing, but then during the building plan approval process, the building department made you change this, that, and the other, that changes their cost as a GC. Now, I have already created a video on the best ways to find a GC, which I have linked down below. So definitely make sure to give that a look. In this process of finding a GC, based on what I've heard from current clients as well as past clients, is finding a GC is very difficult. A lot of the different guys out here are charging insane prices because they know how lucrative the ADU market is. So I would say best advice is to have extreme patience during this step, because you're gonna have to go through a lot of frogs in order to get that prince that is going to, that's a metaphor, in order to find the GC that is right for your project. And as you're out there getting bids from different contractors, what you're essentially doing is you're getting on the phone with them and you're saying, hey, I would like to do an ADU project. I have fully approved plans. Can you come over to my property, take a look at it and take a look at these plans and let me know how much would you charge? I'm ready to get started on this project within the next 1 to 3 months. That's the very simple conversation that you need to have. And I would also suggest that you keep all these different bids organized. So again, create a sheet. On one column, have that contractor's information, and the next column, just flat out have whatever bid they provide you, that whole big chunk number. And then in the third column, any notes that you want to make for that particular contractor, whether you like them or not, whether they were responsive enough, all this different stuff, keep it there so you can keep your thoughts organized, because again, you're gonna be contacting a lot of different people. This is also the stage where a lot of people say to themselves, you know what, I don't want to do a GC route. I don't want to use a general contractor. I want to do it myself. Legally, you have that right to do so. So you can do what is called an owner build, which is you build it yourself. So you go to the building department, you pull the permits as an owner builder. They will require you to sign a bunch of certification and stuff like that. And then you can physically go out there and you can sub out the different things that need to be done in order to build your ADU project. I'm personally going to say I would say do this with extreme caution. It is not for everyone. And I would only encourage you to do this if you are actually a contractor or you have construction experience or you have done it before in the past, because it is not easy by any means. Some people have said that it saves them money. Some people have had the complete opposite be true. And I will just leave it at that. So this is where we get into step 7 of getting an ADU on your property, which is after you've picked the person who is actually going to build the ADU, they're going to get started on construction. So they're going to go ahead and pull the permits through your local building department, and they're going to get started on the process of building out your ADU according to the plans that you have. So what this usually looks like is if there's anything existing that needs to be demolished, typically that will get demolished first. Then the property itself will be graded as it needs to according to whatever grading plans. Again, this is not in every case, but if you happen to be in an area where your city required you to provide a grading plan, then this is where the people will come in and they will flatten out the property and they'll do a bunch of different earthwork to make sure it matches what needs to be done in the plan. After that is done, then your contractor will be in charge of overseeing the rest of the process. So typically what happens next is the foundation goes in. They'll have the city inspector to come out at the certain required times that the inspector is supposed to come out, and then they'll sign off on those. And then the framing will then go up on top of the foundation. You'll have the rough plumbing and the rough electrical that'll also go in, drywall, and then it'll become the HVAC, windows, doors, paint, tile, and all the different finishes will come together. So that's just, and I'm going through this very quickly because I want to make sure I keep this video within the allotted time that I'm hoping for. But essentially, they'll oversee the entire construction process from foundation all the way to finishes. And throughout that process, and this is very important, they'll make sure that they'll get the city inspector out who will go and check off on their work to make sure it is being done correctly. Now, the construction process can take anywhere from 6 to 8 months because sometimes building inspectors, they have so many properties to see within a single day, and that means that it can take longer for them to get to yours. So just keep that in mind. Construction phase of your ADU may vary a lot, just depending on how quickly and how responsive your local city is. It has nothing to do with the general contractor itself, so long as, I say that so long as they're doing what they need to do, but it's something to keep in mind. Once all the construction is complete, then your contractor or you as an owner builder will go ahead and apply for a certificate of occupancy. They'll do their final inspection and make sure that everything has been done according to the plans. That is very important, according to the plans. And then they'll go ahead and give you that final sign off, and then you can apply for your COO, certificate of occupancy. And then at that point, once you get your COO, baby, you have got an ADU, which means you can now go to step number 8 in the ADU process, which is actually using your brand new ADU. So depending on how you decided or why you decided to do an ADU, at this point, once you got that COO, you can jump straight into doing it. So if you want to do a rental, you can go right ahead, get your pictures taken, post them up, Craigslist, Redfin, Trulia, Zillow, everywhere in order to rent it out for a long-term guest. If you want to do Airbnb 30-day rentals, go ahead. This is the point of the process where I would suggest you then start posting that information out on VRBO or Airbnb or those like websites. And if you intend to have your family members move in, this is the point where you will do so. This is very much the finish line. You have made it. Your ADU is done and ready to go. Now that I covered what an ADU is and the types of ADUs there are, as well as giving you a very general outline of the process of getting an ADU on your property, I'm going to go into kind of a lightning round of questions that I've received in the past, and I'm going to answer them for you. So this is going to go very fast. So here we go. A, can you sell your ADU separate from your own home? Yes, but only if your city has opted into the AB 1033 standards. If they have not opted in, you cannot legally sell the ADU separate from your home. How much can you get for your ADU? So here I'm assuming you're talking about rents. I would say hop onto Redfin, Trulia, Zillow, and then do a very quick search of what is renting within a mile radius of your property that is a standalone structure, and then use that as a foundation to see what you could potentially get in rent. Will my ADU be subject to rent control? So if your ADU is created from an existing accessory structure that was built before 1978, then yes, it could be subject to rent control. Definitely definitely check in with your legal professionals on this. Another thing that you should keep in mind is even if you do a brand new ADU, so new construction, even though it will not be subject to rent control, the existing single family residence where you do that detached ADU, if it was built before 1978, it will be subject to rent control. So that's something to keep in mind because it has tripped up a lot of people in the past. What are the new major ADU laws that I need to know for this year? So the biggest ADU laws that you need to know for this year is AB 1033, which does legally allow you to sell your ADU separate from your existing property or home. The only caveat with this is it is not a state mandate. It is an option-based program, which means cities have to opt in. As of the date of this video, no city has opted in, so I would say don't get your hopes up just yet. AB 1332, which just passed this year, which says that by January of 2025, every city has to allow or has to provide pre-approved ADU plans through their website or whatever. Then have AB 976, which completely eliminates owner occupancy requirements for ADUs, which is very helpful for a lot of different people. And then this is a new law that passed not this year, but last year. It's AB 2221, which basically says that any agency that has to take a look at your ADU plans has a 60-day deadline clock. And that was very much because a lot of cities, this is happening a lot, especially up north, like the planning department, they would review the plans within 60 days, but then it would get kicked off to like, I don't know, the fire department or like the demo department or whatever miscellaneous like government department. And then it would just sit there for like months. And so they pretty much changed the rules. And again, this was last year's major rule, but I still want to bring it up because it's super relevant to doing an ADU today. Is every agency that has an eye or has a finger on your ADU plan, they have 60-day deadline in order to get back to you. Can you rent your ADU out on Airbnb? Now, this will honestly just depend on the city. Short answer is no. If you're trying to do short-term rentals, most cities have put measures in place to forbid you from doing rentals that are less than 30 days. However, if you want to do like a minimum 30-day rental, no city can stop you from doing that. And that honestly is what a lot of clients that I've worked with do end up doing. I already built an ADU but didn't get permits. Is it now legal? No, it is not automatically legal. And I would highly advise you not to put anybody in it until you get that structure legalized. How much do ADUs increase the value of your home? So according to several reports, the running average right now is 30%. Of course, this will depend on where your home is, the finishes of your ADU, as well as its size, and it can vary. Do we have to let our lender know that we're building an ADU? No, you do not, in the same way that you do not have to let a lender know if you're doing a bathroom addition or a bedroom addition. Do we have to let our insurance company know we're building an ADU? Yes, you do. Unlike a lender, an insurance company definitely is going to want to know if you're doing ADU or not, which is exactly why in that process, I invite you to have a conversation with your insurance company to make sure that A, they'll provide coverage, and C, get an idea of how much it's going to cost you. Is 16 feet enough for 2 stories? Honestly, here in Southern California, I would say no. In Northern California, I do know that some of their building heights, it's different from how they measure building height here. And so you can fudge 2 stories up there. But from what I've seen here in Southern California, no. Can you add a JADU to a detached ADU? No, a JADU can only be created from an existing space of a primary dwelling unit. How many ADUs can I do if I have an existing multifamily building? So if you have an existing multifamily building, you can do up to 2 detached ADUs. If you just have the building itself and you want to do an ADU within that square footage, you're limited to 25% or at minimum 1 ADU. What are the biggest mistakes to avoid with ADUs? Oof, I love this question, and I'll actually finish the video answering it. So the biggest mistakes that you make with an ADU is 1, not getting it permitted. So I see this happen all the time. People who go ahead, do their own ADUs without getting the permits done. That can bite you in the butt real hard. And if you want any evidence of that, look at this story. Please read it. It's linked down below. The other biggest mistake that you can make when it comes to ADUs is picking a very costly design. I saw this actually happen a lot when I was browsing. So one of the reasons why I decided to create an LA pre-approved ADU design is because these were all the different designs that I was seeing. There's all these kooky structures and stuff like that. That costs you money. So every time you do abnormal shapes, abnormal things, abnormal design features, that adds a lot of money to your end budget. And I would just say avoid those. Don't step too far out of the box unless you can afford to do so. Lastly, the biggest ADU mistake that I see is people don't size down their design for an ADU. It doesn't make sense for a studio to have a full-on like dishwasher, a big fridge, like a 00 fridge, a full 6-range stove, and this and that, because then it's like 50% of your ADU is going to the kitchen and not other things that it can be going to. And with that, I'll go ahead and close out the video. Thank you so much for watching. I know it was a bit of a longer one, but I do appreciate you sticking around. If you have any more questions when it comes to ADUs and you are located in Southern California, please go ahead and drop them down in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, please hit the like button there so the algorithm knows it and can push it towards other homeowners and people out there who can also find it helpful. And with that, I'll go ahead and close it out. Thank you so much and see you on the next one.